When I went into cyberspace, I went into it thinking that it was a place like any other place, and that it would be a human interaction like any other human interaction. I was wrong when I thought that. It was a terrible mistake. The very first understanding that I had that it was not a place like any place, and that the interaction would be different, was when people began to talk to me as though I were a man. When they wrote about me in the third person, they would say he. It interested me to have people think I was a he instead of she, and so at first I did not say anything. I grinned and let them think I was he. This went on for a little while, and it was fun, but after a while I was uncomfortable. Finally, I said unto them that I, Humdog, was a woman and not a man. This surprised them. I suspect that cyberspace exists because it is the purest manifestation of the mass, as Jean Baudrillard described it. It is a black hole. It absorbs energy and personality and then represents it as spectacle. People tend to express their vision of the mass as a kind of imaginary parade of blue-collar workers, their muscle-bound arms raised in defiant salute. This image has its origin in Marx, and it is as romantic as a dozen long-stemmed red roses. The mass is more like one of those faceless dolls you find in nostalgia craft shops, limp, cute, and silent. When I say cute, I am including its macabre and sinister aspects within my definition. It is fashionable to suggest that cyberspace is some kind of island of the blessed, where people are free to indulge and express their individuality. Some people write about cyberspace as though it were a 60s utopia. In reality, this is not true. Major online services like CompuServe and America Online regularly guide and censor discourse. Even some allegedly freewheeling, albeit politically correct boards like The Well censor discourse. The difference is only a matter of the method and degree. Western society has a problem with appearance and reality. It keeps wanting to split them off from each other, make one more real than the other, invest one with more meaning than it does the other. Nietzsche thinks that the conflict over these ideas cannot be resolved. Baudrillard thinks it was resolved, and that this is how come some people think that communities can be virtual. We prefer simulation, simulacra, to reality. Image and simulacra exert tremendous power upon culture. And it is this tension that informs all the debates about real and not real that infect cyberspace with regards to identity, relationship, gender, discourse, and community. Almost every discussion in cyberspace about cyberspace boils down to some sort of debate about truth and packaging. I have seen many people spill their guts online, and I did so myself until, at last, I began to see that I had commodified myself. Commodification means that you turn something into a product which has a money value. In the 19th century, commodities were made in factories, which Karl Marx called the means of production. Capitalists were people who owned the means of production, and the commodities were made by workers who were mostly exploited. I created my interior thoughts as a means of production for the corporation that owned the board I was posting to, and that commodity was being sold to other commodity consumer entities as entertainment. That means that I sold my soul like a tennis shoe, and I derived no profit from the sale of my soul. As if this were not enough, all of my words were made immortal by means of tape backups. Furthermore, I was paying $2 an hour for the privilege of commodifying and exposing myself. Worse still, I was subjecting myself to the possibility of scrutiny by such friendly folks as the FBI. They can and have downloaded pretty much whatever they damn well please. The rhetoric in cyberspace is liberation speak. The reality is that cyberspace is an increasingly efficient tool of surveillance with which people have a voluntary relationship. Proponents of so-called cyber communities rarely emphasize the economic, business-minded nature of the community. Many cyber communities are businesses that rely upon the commodification of human interaction. They market their businesses by appeal to historical identification and fetishism no more or less than the corporations that brought us the $200 athletic shoe. Proponents of cyber community do not often mention that these conferencing systems are rarely culturally or ethnically diverse, although they are quick to embrace the idea of cultural and ethnic diversity. I'll give you an example. The Well, a conferencing system based in Sausalito, California, is often touted as an example of a social cluster in cyberspace. In July of 1993, in a case that received national media coverage, a man's reputation was destroyed on the well by well people because he had dared to have a relationship with more than one woman at the same time, and because he did not conform to well social protocol. I will not say that he did not conform to ethical standards, because I believe that the ethic of truthfulness in cyberspace is sometimes such as to render the word ethics meaningless. In cyberspace, for example, identity can be an art form. But the issues held within the topic, called News 1290, were very complex and spoke to the heart of the problem of cyberspace, the desire to invest the simulacrum with the weight of reality. Of the hundreds of voices heard in this topic, only a very few were astute enough to express the idea that the events had been in actuality caused more by the medium than by the persons who suffered the consequences of the events. Hysterical identification is a mental device that enables one person to take on the sufferings of a group of persons. It is something that until the 1880s was considered a problem of females. In our society, many decisions about who a person is are made through the device of hysterical identification. In many cases, this is brought about by the miracle of commercial advertising, which invests products with magical qualities, making them into fetishes. Buy the fetish, and the identification promised by the advertisement is yours. It is tidy, easy, and requires no investment other than money. One of the interesting things about this to me is that they were expunged from the record. News 1290 exists in archive. That means it is stored in an electric cabinet, sort of like what the Vatican did with the transcripts of the trial of Galileo. It's there, but you have to look for it, and mention of the 1290 makes well people nervous. What I'm getting at here is that electronic community is a commercial enterprise that dovetails nicely with the increasing trend towards dehumanization in our society. It wants to commodify human interaction, enjoy the spectacle regardless of the human cost. If and when the spectacle proves inconvenient or alarming, it engages in creative history like any good banana republic. This, however, should not surprise anybody. Aesthetically, electronic community of the kind likely to be extolled in the gentle New Age press contains both elements of the modernist resistance to depth and appeal to surface combined with the postmodern aesthetic of fragment. The electronic community leaves a permanent record which is open to scrutiny while maintaining an illusion of transparency. In doing this, it somehow manages to satisfy the need of the Orwellian and the psychoarchaeologist. People can talk about cyberspace as the utopian community only because it is literature and therefore subject to editorial revision. These two events, plus another where a woman's death was choreographed and as a spectacle online, made me think about what electronic community was and how it probably really did not exist, except, like I said, as a kind of market for the consumption of sign value. Many times in cyberspace I felt it necessary to say that I was human. Once I was told that I existed primarily as a voice in somebody's head. Lots of times I need to see handwriting on paper or a photograph or a phone conversation to confirm the humanity of the voice. But that is the way that I am. I resist being boxed and inventoried, and I guess I take William Gibson seriously when he writes about machine intelligence and constructs. I do not like it. I suspect that my words have been extracted and that when this essay shows up, they will be extracted some more. When I left cyberspace, I left early one morning and forgot to take out the trash. 2 friends called me on the phone afterwards and said, "Hami, your directory is still there," and I said, "Oh." And they knew, and I knew, that it was possible that people had been entertaining themselves with the contents of my directories. The amusement never ends, as Peter Gabriel wrote. Maybe sometime I will rant again if something interesting comes up. In the meantime, give my love to the FBI.